Michael. Hello, everybody, and thank each and every one of you. A huge thank you for being here. A lot of you been here for quite a while. I'm guessing that you just had it. You were just logged into the stream and doing many other things. But some of you been sitting in the stream now for a couple hours, and it's good to see each of you. I'm not going to go down the roll call. I've been chatting with you in the streams. I appreciate all of you that's here. We are going to be talking about some information tonight that some folks may have wondered about, but never fully comprehended or seen any value in it. And that's going to be line intervals and LPI. And line intervals and LPI are one and the same. It's just two different ways of saying something. It's kind of like metric and imperial. They both have the same measurement, just two ways of saying the same thing. We're not going to be a long, huge stream tonight. I promise. I hope. But I want to talk a little bit about the basics of the laser and how the laser's formed and its shape before we go into the LPI, because you really have to have kind of a basic understanding of what that laser is, how it works, how it is formed, so you can understand why what we're going to be doing is going to do what it does. How does it produce, and why does it produce the outcome that it does? And like Forrest Gump, I'm not a very smart person. I don't have any formal education on lasers. I only know what I know about lasers from firsthand use and self-taught and asking questions and Google. All right. So when I explain these things to you, it's going to be coming from that. In fact, when I go into West Penn hardwoods and I'm looking at their different wood types, and I know what I want, but I don't know what I need. And there's a huge difference. And so that's what I'll tell them when I go in. I said, guys, I'm learning, but I don't even have a high school education on wood and wood species yet. I'm still a preschooler. I'm still learning. Got a lot to learn. So, so I'm a little bit more than a preschooler when it comes to the lasers and how they work, but I'm no engineer. I've not designed one or built one. I've just got a pretty good understanding of how they work and why we do what we do, when we do what we do, to get the outcome that we get. And there are so many different ways that you can configure your laser, so many possibilities. And we get into a rut. We get into this worked for me with this laser, and you just tunnel vision. That's what you do with every engraving. And there's so many other things you can try and do. You can, with all of the different fill types, with the offset fill, and when you increase your line intervals and use that with offset fill, that's when you can get some really crazy patterns going on with some of the designs you work with. So understanding what these things are and how they work can help you really begin to, and I've used this term before, paint with your laser. Your laser does not have to generate just a monochrome output. And I'm not speaking of a grayscale. Of course, you can vary your degree of engraving as far as darkness, but you can also do more than just a line and a fill. So what we're going to talk about here is not a replacement for how you do your engravings. This is not going to be the way to, I'm not saying, hey, you know what, this is a new way you'd be doing all of your engravings and you should do every engraving this way. This is just another way to use your laser in the right circumstance, because there are going to be times that this is going to be completely inappropriate and give you a terrible result, and it's not what you want to do. So, but I'm hoping that by explaining how it does what it does when it does what it does will help you recognize when this may be a good opportunity to use something like that. What is a laser? What is a diode? And I'm talking about the diode lasers right now. I'm not talking about the CO2s or the fibers. I'm talking about the diode lasers. What is a diode laser? Well, right there, diode. All right. Well, do I have one sitting here? And I don't have one sitting here. I've got, the little LED pucks, the little light pucks. LEDs stands for what? Light emitting diode. Well, that's a diode. So how's that diode different than this diode? Well, basically, a light emitting diode that you see in the pucks or any accessory lighting, those are diodes that emit a light that are erratic, unfocused. The wavelengths, they're not focused in any way. They just think of Bobcat Goldthwait on stage. He's all over the place and hard to pin down. As a light emitting diode. The diode in your diode laser, however, it is it's not just, and I keep using, or I keep wanting to use the word focus, but it's not the same kind of focus as in when we focus our laser. But it's concentrated. It's not erratic. It is controlled, and it's a focused beam of light out of that diode, and then it's controlled and manipulated with mirrors to really concentrate all of that energy and power into one direction, and it's a different type of wavelength. But there's still a diode. But it's just a diode that emits light. And now we're controlling it, focusing it, and sending all that energy in one space. How many diodes are in this laser? This is the switchable 1030 watt. And to do the 10 watt, to get, and you got to be careful when you look at lasers. Some of the manufacturers will do some kind of funky with the wording, and they'll say, well, this is a 22 watt laser. Our laser is more powerful than this one. Or a 20 watt, so ours is 22, so ours is more powerful. When actually this 10 watt laser is actually 11 watts, because it's two 5.5 watt diodes that are focused into each other, but it's not an 11 watt diode laser. It's an 11 watt output. But you don't necessarily get 11 watts at your engraving point. Once those are combined, go through their mirrors, go through their lenses, and then the actual output, where it hits the surface, where the meat hits the pavement, it's about a 10 watt laser. So, and manufacturers will play games with their wording, and they didn't lie, because it was an 11 watt or a 22 watt output. That's not what you get by the time it gets to the material. So what shape is a laser? And that's going to the beam, and that's going to come in handy to know and understand when we start looking at the different ways I did this test. The laser beam is not round and it's not square. It is at best an ovaloid beam to begin with, and then they send it. And I say ovaloid, but I don't even know it's a word. But it's not an oval, and it's not rectangular. It's obtuse, whatever. But then there's two of them, and they use mirrors and lenses to focus those two together. So you've got two beams coming together for their optimum size, but they're neither one round to begin with, and they're not square to begin with or rectangular to begin with. So your output is also going to be a little obtuse. And that's why when you look at your laser manufacturer specs, when it tells you your Y and X on spot size, they're different because of how they focus those laser beams together. And that's going to be important in a minute. And focus. When we go to do our laser cutting and engraving, we've all got, or we all had, some of you may have lost them, but your lasers come with a focus tool. And a lot of times you'll see your focus tool's got varying depths or heights, steps on your focus tool. And the reason for that is because this is set up, your highest point, this is for the Rolly XW, but it's going to be true for 99% of all your diodes. The highest most point there is where the laser is at its optimum size when it contacts the surface of the material. So that's the perfect smallest possible spot size. You've got the most power right at the surface of the material for engraving. The reason you have the steps is for when you're going to go cut. And why do you do that? Why do you lower the height of the laser, the focus of the laser? Well, that's so that you can take that strongest, most optimum, powerful point of the diode laser and drop it into the midpoint of the material thickness so that you can get an even curve all the way through the laser, because that laser is actually going to be a little conical shaped as it comes out and hits your material. And if you were to try and cut through really thick material and it not be focused in the middle of your laser will actually cut the material out with a little bit of a taper to it. And I know this because I learned that when I was doing inlays. Whenever I was cutting out pieces for inlays like this, if you didn't have the focus just right, well, you can actually cut out a piece of the material. And then if it was a mirrored image, you couldn't do this with the text, but if it was just a square or a circle and you've cut that out and it was way, way out of focus, if you take that cut out piece and flip it and try and put it back in the original material, you'll see it don't want to fit because it's got a taper on it. So that's why the laser is shaped the way that it is. And now that we've talked a little bit about that, the other thing to recognize, all of these things are happening with your laser height, your focus is going to change, the size of your spot size, whether or not you're scanning on a 0 or a 90-degree angle is going to affect your size. But your material is going to have a huge impact on the result that you get at the laser. And bamboo is a perfect example of it. Bamboo engraves horrible. You get extremely inconsistent results. I've shown you and did videos on showing you that raising the focus when you're engraving bamboo to get a larger spot size will help immensely with getting a uniform engraving color and result on your bamboo. All your materials are going to do different with this technique, and that's why it's important that you, one, I don't like bouncing around with my vendors. I've got this material that it works, and I've tested it. I know what it's going to, and I have a reasonable expectation of what the results are going to be when I use certain settings. And this week, I worked with some Baltic birch that I got that was Glowforge ready. So it was 12 by 19 instead of 300 by 300. And this is 3mm Baltic birch, but it has the comparisons between how it engraves and how it cuts. Everything I know about Baltic birch is completely irrelevant. This stuff does not do anything like the Filer stuff that I use. I had increased the powers drastically. Couldn't even cut it with 10 watt. It's had so much garbage in it, I had to jump it up to the 30 watt. So consistency with your materials, get familiar with them, do some testing, now you've got and create your material library base. So that, and if you even have to, you can say, okay, well, this is Filer 3mm Baltic birch, but when I need that glow forge, I got to use these because that's a different, and I learned that this week. Keep different information. Keep that information. Once you learn it, put it in the library so you don't have to go, what did I do? How did I do that? Or have pockets or stacks and stacks and stacks of test cards laying all over your work area. All right. And I made some notes so I can try to get through this without it being a 5-hour stream. So I'm looking to see what my next, what is most important, time or quality? And can you really have both? You can save some time and still have some quality pieces, but only if you've done the necessary testing to find out that sweet spot. Let's see here. All right, what is LPI and line interval? Because that's how we're going to be talking about. That's how that one change in your engraving is what we're going to talk about tonight, on how you can literally cut your engraving time on a project in half. I've even got it down to a fourth of the same image in a fourth of the time, but there is a difference in the quality. And there was a lot of testing it went involved to find that. But now that I know I've only got to do that testing one time. LPI is lines per inch. LPI, lines per inch. Line interval is the distance between lines as the laser scans, and it's metric. And that's where I said it's metric and imperial. In LightBurn, you'll see it as a 0.1 line interval, 1/10 of a millimeter between your scans, or 0.08 is your what they'll say is your highest. It's because most diode lasers say they have a 0.08 spot size. So if you've got a 0.08 spot size on the X and you do a 0.08 line interval, then it's not going to, it's wherever it engraves, it's just barely going to bump up to where that last engraving stopped. So it's going to engrave every bit of that. Well, since you're engraving wood, if you're engraving wood, you don't need to use a 0.08 line interval, because the wood is when that laser hits that surface of that wood, it's combusting, it's burning. That's how you get your engraving. You're burning the surface of the material. And different materials are going to react and burn differently. Even the same species from different vendors will burn and engrave differently. So you can get by in most cases with a minimum of a 0.1 line interval with the focus, and have a really good result with the focus right where it needs to be. But if you're doing something and it does not need to be frameable, $1,500 artwork that you're putting out. And Chris says, with wood, I call it my burn curve. And yeah, and your curve is going to change with the species. How much of it burns away is going to change with your species. But if you're not making a $1,500 piece of artwork that you're going to put behind a $300 frame, and you're doing a really big engraving, and you're looking at it and it's calling for 16, 17 hours to engrave it. When I first started doing lasers, I was like, I need more power. I need to go faster. And I was talking while I was still testing minutes before going live. And I think it was Andy that had made the comment about, it seems awfully slow to get these results. And well, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. And that was something that it took me over a year before I finally realized speed does not equal quality. And power is actually can be counterproductive when you want to get a quality piece. That's why if you look at some of the pieces that are really, really intricate, they're actually done with a little 5-watt laser because they got a super tiny little spot size. So, and I think Andy is talking about, his results. He was doing it with his 20-watt, and the 20-watt's going to have different than the 10-watt. I think he said he ran my test, and the test that I shared with my patrons, which was funny. Squirrel. There is a test in LightBurn. It's the laser tools, and it's called an interval test. And it produces a result like this, where it's just one column of 5 squares that has variables that you can change the line interval. And that's all it puts out. So it's 5. So this was 3 separate tests. And I'm like, that's going to take forever. So I went in and created my own variable test, my own variable line interval test that has a 5x5 square with variable speeds and powers. And I thought I was doing something. Shared that with the patrons. Turns out LightBurn already does that. In the material test card, Chris pointed out to me, hey, dummy, there's a drop-down menu in the material test. If you go into LightBurn and the laser tools and the material test, there's menus in there that drop down. You can change the parameters that you're wanting to test. You can change, and I've seen that because I thought when I've looked at it before, I was like, well, you can put the speed on this side and the power at the bottom, or the power at this side and speed at the bottom. And I never paid no attention to it, having the line intervals up there, and I just missed it. There's so many things hidden in LightBurn, but it's there already in the material test in LightBurn. So for the patrons who downloaded that file, if you've got a 10-watt laser, hey, great, you keep it and use it on your 10-watt. But if you're like Andy, you've got a 20-watt, or you want to test it on different power outputs, go into the LightBurn and the laser tools software, and laser tools menu. And in the laser tools menu, material test. In fact, let's just go over here, switch. So if you go into laser tools and then the material test right here, here's where you have the option to change your parameters. You can, and I've seen this before, but I've never paid any attention to this right here. You can change the intervals and in the passes, and the same thing over here. So you can configure your own test card to generate the test pieces that I thought I was really doing something with. So go, Andy's, use that tool, that menu, to test with your 20-watt to find the best, because I've tested for 3.5, 4 days to find the best settings for this. And let's see here. All right. Increasing the line interval is not going to work on really, really small engravings, because if you're increasing the line interval and you're making it further distance between each pass of the laser, if it's a delicate engraving or a very small engraving area, and you'll see that when I show you these images or show you the outcomes, the laser it'll be a poor result, because it's so small and you move so far. There are unengraved. There are areas that are not engraved, and you can accommodate that by doing a line after fill. But now when you add an extra line, an extra pass, well, now it starts to defeat the purpose. You reach a point of your returns are not paying off. You got to find that sweet spot. This is ideal for large pieces and for certain materials. Raising the focus on bamboo, like I said, is a huge game changer for engraving bamboo. And depending on the quality of your bamboo and how it is prepared, finished, glued up, you may find that raising the focus, prefocusing the laser as much as 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters may make a big difference. But that's if you're doing just some words. If you start doing images, intricate designs, and you raise the laser more than 2 millimeters or so, it's like I give you a coloring book for adults that's got really intricate designs in it and flower petals everywhere. And then I give you a pack of the extremely wide tip Sharpie markers, the ones that have got the, a 1/4 inch wide tip on it, and say, okay, I want you to use these 1/4 inch Sharpie markers to paint those little bitty flower petals. Well, you can do it, but it ain't gonna look good because you're not gonna be able to keep it within the lines. Well, as you raise that focus of that laser, you're increasing your spot size, and so now you're starting to broaden it. And if it's a really wide piece, and you'll see it in the images, and I'm gonna get ready to start showing you the images where there should be a gap or a void in a design. Well, it starts to fill in because the laser's gotten so big that the void has gotten smaller. So I want to show you some tests that I did. I want to show you the test pieces and what I was looking for. And then, and actually, before we do that, I'm going to jump over here to LightBurn, and I'm going to show you why it makes a difference on the X and the Y when it comes to engraving. And I'm glad I got my RC tonight because I'm a lot of talking tonight. So let's go over here to LightBurn. I want that one, and I want to switch here. All right. So here's the file that I thought I was doing something that I created for my patrons and sent it to them, not knowing that you don't need it because you can go and do your own in LightBurn like a dummy. But down here, this is an example of my laser's spot size. This is the size of my XW 10 watt. And I've got one circle here, or not a circle, one ellipse there, and one ellipse there, and there's a third one here, which is the whole thing. And if I go over and look at the Rolly Automation the Rolly Automation website, I'm going to duplicate that and bring it up. Oh, it went way too far. Let's bring it back down. Where'd it go? There it is. When I look at the Rolly Automation website, it tells me the spot size of my laser is going to be roughly these dimensions. We'll go ahead and metric. There we go. About like that. A 0.06 and a 0.14, give or take. I don't have it up here, but I looked it up before, and that's about what the combined spot size is. But that spot size is made up of this laser beam and this laser beam, 2 separate laser beams in order to get that result. Actually, we'll go get rid of that. There we go. Those 2 laser beams. And so you can see there's a sweet spot in there, and it's narrower across the X as it's scanning on a 0-degree scan angle. So if I grab this, group it together, and I'm moving this back and forth like the laser does, that's why you get a narrower result when you scan on the X. But because it's wider than it is tall, when I scan, too far, there we go. When I scan on the Y, I'm getting a much larger path when I'm engraving. So that got me thinking too. Not only can I change my line interval to decrease how many times I'm having to scan back and forth to create my image, And we know, some of us, most of us, a lot of us, not all of us, some of us, we know that a gantry laser will move faster on the X because it's only moving the weight of the laser module as it goes back and forth. When it's got to scan on the Y or on a 90-degree scan angle, it has to move the weight of the laser module and the gantry. It doesn't move as fast, and it takes longer to reach its speeds whenever you're engraving. So for that reason, the default mindset for engraving with a gantry laser is a 0-degree scan angle. It's faster. But what if we changed the scan angle and changed the LPI? Is it still faster? I've got a wider spot size, and because it's wider, I can increase that line interval even more. So we did a lot of testing this week, and I'm going to Terry's saying show and tell. All right, yeah, we're getting there. I'm looking here. Before I start bringing out these test pieces, and this this stack is just the test pieces. That ain't including the images that I've done that I'm going to show you too. But before I go into all this and explain the differences and why I did what I did, does anybody have any questions or comments or any corrections? Did I say something? And I know that Chris knows a whole lot more than I do, technically speaking, and generally speaking, probably. So if I've made any comments that any of you feel were just completely and totally erroneous, tell me, and you know, because I'm learning. I learned from these interactions. I do not proclaim to know everything, and my ego is not so big that I can't stand to be corrected. I welcome it. That's how we learn. That's how we all learn. And speaking of that, there was an instance this week, and I won't mention names, but someone reached out to me and was pointing out that they didn't understand something and they thought that I was wrong in something that I did. And I'm like, no. I explained it all in the video. Did you watch all the video? And well, because I'm thinking it's all there. It's in the video. I know it's there. We discussed it in length on why I did what I did. So you're asking why I did what I did, but I told you already. Did you not watch the video? Well, they took it as I was being snide or snarky, and I wasn't. I was just, hey, did you watch it? Because it's there. Well, they took it that I was being snide or snarky, and I wasn't by no means. And we continued to discuss and got past that. But it turns out, he's in a different part of the world. People communicate differently. People's personalities are different. And I will never, ever, ever act like I know more than you do. Ever. That's somebody else on this in this world, not me. So if I don't see any questions, no corrections. Let's see here. Yeah, Chris says burn curve. All right. And Chris says your result can be between the scan line. Your results can be between the scan lines. And I don't know what you're referring to there, because that you probably whenever it was don't know. With the laser beam, the laser beam is wider on the X. I'm hoping that I answered that, Andy. Because why is the laser beam wider on the X-axis? It's because the original shape of the laser to begin with, and then the way they're combined, that's just because they can. The way I understand it, they can put as many mirrors in there and lenses in there. The more lenses they put in there to try and focus that laser and get it down to an optimum size, Well, every time it passes through a material or bounces off something, I think you're losing a little bit of power. And then also it comes down to size. How, it's got to be compact, and weight is an issue. If you start adding too much stuff to it, well, now you've overworking your stepper motors. You can't do it. You're losing speed. You're losing. So you have to find that happy medium. And so with Rolly, and that's what I'm speaking of. It's here. They've decided that this number of lenses to focus the laser to this particular size ends up with a result that it's going to give you this size and this size on the Y. And the reason, because the laser beam output is not round to begin with, and it's not square or rectangular. It is obtuse, ovaloid, the emission. And now they're trying to focus two non-round pieces. And so that's why you get a difference in the width and height of your output. Thank you. Thank you, Moses. Is it less powerful? No. Andy's, and this is, because your sweet spot is still the same. It's not less powerful, but your laser is going to move slower, as I was mentioning. And I may have answered these questions as I was explaining myself. It's not any less power, but because you are now moving the entire gantry and the module itself, the laser is going to slow down. But at the speeds we're going to be working at, it's irrelevant, because we ain't moving fast to begin with. Not for these tests and not for this material. I hate to see that. Moses says his XW is down after the 2.02. Well, I have 2.01. I have not put 02 on this computer, and I'm not going to do any more updates because I'm seeing things like what you're saying. 2.0, I had a few little bugs. 2.01, I have even more bugs. And now I'm seeing people like you comment 2.02, they've just, it's quit. So I don't know what's going on. So yeah, beware. And in fact, that's is 2.02 safe to upgrade. I haven't used it. I'm not going to use it because I see too many other people complaining about it. Chris has more access to that and what's going on there. But guys, go to the LightBurn's forums website, the LightBurn support forum, and ask those guys, or look and just read and see how much feedback's coming in about all the things that are crashing and not working. And when you no longer see people complaining about it, then it's probably safe to download. But right now, if you're on 1.7, I recommend staying there. That's my personal recommendation. Okay. And all right. 10 versus 11. I am guessing you're talking about Windows, maybe. And they're having all kinds of issues. I don't know if it's how much of it's Windows related and how much of it's software related. But I have 9 computers. Okay. All right. Now let's look at some of the work that I did. So, as I said, when I didn't know no better, this is what I thought the line interval test was, but that's not what you want to do. That's trash. I went to the trouble of making my own test pieces, test patterns, and I did 3 different ones, and I started with what I know works. I know what results to expect when I used a 0.1 line interval, or I think it's 254 lines per inch. And I know what powers provide some of the best results when I use my Baltic birch at 800 millimeters a minute and a 0.1 line interval. And so I said, I'm going to start there. And if that's what I know works, then let's push the envelope and see where it begins to break down and where do I start having lackluster results. And I've got another camera set up over here, but for these, I'm going to see what we can do here. So this is my test pattern, the one I created. But this bottom row right here, this is the, like right there, the 10, 800 millimeters a minute and 10% power with a 0.1 line interval is some of my favorite settings when using the 10-watt Rolly when I want a really dark and even engraving. So I wanted to, go a little bit less and then push it. I knew I didn't need to go any more than that because there I'm starting to get some overburn going on and it's getting kind of deep. So then I started increasing my line interval. And initially I was increasing it by 0.04 of a millimeter each time. So I went from 0.1 to 1.4, 1.8, 0.22, 0.26. And there you can start to see that the quality of the birch and with some irregularities in the grain, it was starting to have an uneven result on the engraving. So I said, okay, well, there's the limit on that. And I didn't get a real good result on that entire column. So I said, okay, I'm going to scrap this completely. And I wanted to continue to find out what my best results were going to be. But I also wanted to try and play with raising the focus, pre-focusing it. And I will, if you ever hear me say pre-focus or sub-focus, focus is focused. Focused is right where it needs to be. Pre-focused, I've raised the module above the focus level, pre-focused the laser before focus. Sub-focus is when I'm cutting. I'm sub-focusing, lowering like a submarine, sub-focus, below the surface. So I did some tests with a pre-focus. And these tests I did with only a 2 millimeter pre-focus. I started with and I'm going to show you these side by side in a second. I started with the same 0.1. So I did the exact same test, but then I pre-focused at 2 millimeters. And this is where it's going to start to show you how going to that wider, because when you pre-focus it, I'm still scanning on a zero scan angle. But by pre-focusing it, I have now made that spot size larger because I've raised that module. And by making it larger, it is going to be slightly overlapping where it wasn't overlapping at all when it's focused. You with me? And I'm going to look here. Let's see here. Chris says, I learned 90% of what I know about LightBurn from the LightBurn forums. Okay. Yeah, I don't spend a whole lot of time in there in the forums. I learned a lot about what I'm doing, getting in here and breaking stuff. Trial and error. Okay. And then he goes, oh, wrong. My focus tool gets plus or minus 4 millimeters from optimal. Yeah. Depending on what you're doing and what your outcome is. And you went plus or minus 4. Well, I've got a result here that's plus pre-focused 6 millimeters. And I did that to show people that, yes, you can go too far. But we are working on a workaround. Test was work. Can't. Okay. All right. So back to this was the initial. This was at focused. See there at the bottom, focused. And I've got that area at the top that it just wasn't getting a full engraving. This is pre-focused 2 millimeters. And the pre-focused has got a full grid of, nothing's changed except I raised the focus on it. That's all. That's all I changed on that piece. But if you also notice, by going to a taller or a higher focus, it's over here, you see the overburn that's starting to happen? See all that, the singeing going around the perimeter? So there are trade-offs, and that's why I said it's what quality are you looking for? What result are you looking for? You're going to sacrifice one for the other. Now, these are straight off the laser. Nothing's been done to them. They've not been cleaned or sanded or prepped in any way, shape, fashion, form. I want you to see them straight off the laser bed, because that will all clean up. Every bit of that will clean up real nice. And I sand 90% of the stuff I take off the laser anyway. Some say, I don't sand nothing. Well, if I'm wanting to put a good quality finish on something, it's getting sanded and prepped and then sprayed and sanded again and again. So sanding is not a bad thing. But by increasing that, by raising the focus, I got a full engrave through that entire piece at the 8% power. Then I said, well, let's keep pushing the envelope, because that allowed me to get a full palette. And I went all the way up to a 0.26. Well, here I picked up from there and went from, before we go there, questions. Can you please explain the power settings on your test of 8% to 16%, but in the cuts and layers window, the 8. Oh, because when you're doing the test, okay. Yes, I can, Andy. I'll be happy to explain that, but I don't want to. That's going to derail this train of thought. It's a good question, and I will explain it to you in a few minutes. So put a pin in that. Remind me if I don't think of it before we get out of here, and I'll show you why it did what it did. Okay, but that's a good one. Good question. If you pre-focus to engrave, how does that affect the cut process? Do you have to refocus before cutting or change the cut settings? I did not, because, and it gets back to what is this process is not this is not supposed to replace your engraving process. This is just another arrow to put in your quiver for the right occasions to use it. If you are trying to cut 6 millimeter material and you've raised your focus 2 to 3 millimeters, now you've lost a ton of cutting ability, because it should in fact be lowered 2 or 3 millimeters. So now you're 6 millimeters out of focus trying to cut through the material. So yeah, when you pre-focus the laser, it's going to affect your cutting ability. But if you're working with something that's just a little thin, 3 millimeter plywood, then I did not go back and refocus it before I cut these out. But yes, Jack, good thing to point out. If you were trying, and this really is not about cutting. Where I see this coming in the most handy is for folks who are doing a lot of engraving on cutting boards or something. It's a pre-made piece and it's a lot of engraving or a lot of image or a lot of script, and they want to cut down on that. And it's not a high detailed image. It's just a basic image. Or if it's just a frame or something like that. There's a time and a place for this technique, and it's not an answer or a replacement for all engravings. So, all right. All right, now, see, now I done forgot where I was at. So I took and I did my pre-focus up to 0.26, and I picked up from there and wanted to push the envelope and see how far I could take it before I started getting some less than desirable results. And here is the pre-focus up to a 0.26. This picks it up and goes from a 0.26 to a 0.42. Trying to get the glare off and centered just right. There we go. So that is a huge difference in line intervals. Started out at a 0.1 and now we're at a 0.42. So it's the 0.1 has 4 times as many lines as the 0.42 does. So that 0.42, and I'm gonna try and put this over to the other camera because this is where you might start to see a little bit. First, this, and I wish I had better lighting. This is pre-focused 2 millimeters, and that 0.1 at 12% power right there. That's pretty good and pretty uniform, and you don't see anything that's really out of whack on that. But if I come up here and I look at this 0.42 at 20% power, that looks pretty good too. But if I get the angle just right, there you go. You can start to see the horizontal lines in there. But you got to get really close on there to start to see those horizontal lines. But now I'm starting to see it, and I realized, okay, 0.42 is about as far as I want to go. Because once those lines start to become visible, you can actually continue to increase that, and you'll actually see these on some more tests that I'm getting ready to show you. You'll actually start to see non-engraved areas. So that's not the result you're looking for. But by running these, I'm like, okay, in the right circumstance, on the right image, on the right material, I now know that instead of running a 0.1 line interval at 12% power, I can get a really darn good result with a 0.42 line interval at 20% power and cut my engraving time in a quarter of the time. So this is not speculation, it's fact. It's not hyperbole, it's fact. And then this is an engraving I did as an example. And again, straight off the laser, no sanding, no prep work. And the first time I did it, I did what I would normally use for my settings. This is a line interval of I did a 0.08. I went as small as you can go, a 0.08, or not as small as you can go, but that you probably would go. A 0.08, 800 millimeters a minute, and 90% power on the 10 watt. And it says 90 degree, but that's a 0 degree scan angle. One pass with air assist in focus. And this engraving took me 19, and this is only a 4-inch square. And it took me 19 minutes and 47 seconds to engrave that. 19 minutes and 47 seconds. And you can see I've actually got a little bit of overburn going on. It's got some discoloration around the edges that would clean up with a little bit of sanding. But 19 minutes and 47 seconds. Now this one, a line interval of 0.2, 800 millimeters a minute, 12% power, 10 watt, 0 degree scan angle, one pass with air, pre-focused 2 millimeters, and it took me 9 minutes and 11 seconds. And that one does not need any sanding. It's not as dark, but it looks good. It's very passable engraving. And honestly, side by side, wrong way, there, and back up, there we go. This one looks better. And it was done in half the time, from 19 minutes and 47 seconds to 9 minutes and 11 seconds. All right. Then this is when I found Chris sent me the message. Hey, dum-dum, you can do that in the material test. And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. Thank you very much. And the material test, you can make it as big or as small as you want to. Where I did here, I did 5 by 5. I went ahead and did the presets that they have, which was 10 by 10. And I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that all of them? Yeah, I did 4 different tests with the uh, tool in LightBurn. And let's see here, 0 degree. I want to show. I'm going to these tests will allow me to show you and it's not a downside. This is just something that can happen, and you can use this to get some interesting designs with your engravings. I've talked about it before, about painting with your laser. If you don't want to have just a solid feel, engraving, if you're doing, say you're doing an SVG of just a floral bouquet, well, you can change your power settings a little bit, and you can have the leaves burn a little darker than the floral petals. Some of them you'll just have an outline, so they'll be kind of unfinished white, if you will. But then if you want to add some variations to the stems or to the leaves, or give different petals different appearances, you could change the line interval so much so that instead of a solid engraving, you get those horizontal lines just ever so often, that and create that pattern. Then you can take that a step further and do a crosshatch. And a crosshatch, if you're not familiar with that in LightBurn, a crosshatch is where you're telling the laser to scan on the 0 and then scan on the 90. But then if you changed your scan angle and tell it to do a scan angle of 22 degrees, it'll do a 22 degree, and then it'll do the opposite. So then you get these diamond shapes going on. And I created some really cool sunflowers, creating like the sunflower seeds in the center of the sunflower petal, but doing diamonds and crosshatch. You can get all kinds of really neat designs using your line intervals as a different brush for your laser. So let's look first at the 0 degree scan angle. And those are both 90. All right, and switch. So this is using the test in LightBurn. And I want to get up there. There we get up really close. You can start to see up there at that top. There we go, at the 0.60. Now you're seeing that the scan angle is so large, or the line interval is so large, that you're getting unengraved areas, or you're seeing those vertical lines. There you go, in the engraving. And so depending on what your image is, that could be a negative, or it could be a positive. It's a great way to accentuate different parts of your design. And that one was 0 degree scan angle. And then this one is the same test, but I pre-focused it just 2 millimeters. And there wasn't a huge difference, but you can see there's a lot more overburn going on here than here. And I was looking to see if, raising it was enough to start to fill in some of these. You've got to come down here before you start to see a lot of the gaps being filled in from the pre-focusing technique. But here is where I wanted to show you the big difference. The difference between the spot size on a 0 degree scan and a 90 degree scan. And I got some questions. I should probably start marking this column. How are you measuring? How am I measuring what? Oh, how am I measuring my pre-focus? Old school, brother. I'm guessing that's what you're asking. How am I measuring? How am I measuring my pre-focus? Because that's the only thing I can think of that. Yeah, there we go. What are you using to measure the focus of your laser? Well, the focus tool that comes with the laser, obviously. But then if I want to pre-focus at 3 millimeters, I've got a scrap piece of wood that I've measured. It's 3 millimeters. I'll lay that scrap piece of wood on the surface of my material and then place my tool on top of that. Now I've just raised it 3 millimeters. I did some tests earlier tonight, and I'm going to show you where I actually stacked 2 of those and raised it 6 millimeters off the surface. And that's, because that's crucial. That's a real good question to ask, Carrie, because if you're doing all these tests to find out what works best, and you found out that it works great doing this at this 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter pre-focus, well, if you don't do that in the same spot every time, well, your results are going to vary. So I just simply use a piece of material that goes on the bed first, and then put my focus tool on top of that, and that raises it that much off of the material every time. I use the same piece. So I have the same, or if I don't have the same piece, I check it with my mic and make sure, yes, that's 3 mil. Have you tested at 1.5 or 2? Yeah, and some of these were at 2 mil. And what I'm getting ready to show you, and there you just seen there, that was a 2 millimeter test on the 0 scan angle, and you could hardly tell any difference in the 2 millimeter pre-focus on the X. But here's a 2 millimeter pre-focus on the Y, and let's look at what that did. Because it's different. It's different. All right. Let's see here. 90-degree scan angle. 90 degrees. Oh, and then something that this was interesting. I found, because when I first seen it, I was like, what in the world happened? Why is that like that? And then it made sense after I thought about it. We're changing the line interval. How many lines there are, the space between the passes is the line interval. And here, if I'm telling it to do a 0.433 line interval on a rectangle that was supposed to be 10 millimeters, well, if it's 10 millimeters are its boundary, and I wanted to have a 0.433 line interval between each, well, you can only get so many lines in that 10 millimeter spacing. Then if I go into a 0.2667, well, when you do that, you're going to get a different number of lines, because the result, and you'll see it here in a second, some of these squares are wider than the other ones because of the constraints of the line interval. You gave it a definition, and this would be the same with your engraving. Your engraving has a predetermined size. Now you're telling the laser to fill that predetermined area using these parameters. Well, if it can only get X number of pieces in here, or passes, it may or not completely fill that entire area of your design. So your size of your piece, and that's why I say I can see this being a lot more handy, like right here. This is a no-brainer. 9 minutes versus 19 minutes. That's a no-brainer. This is proof of concept that there is a time and place that this works, and this is a huge tool to have in your huge arrow to have in your quiver. But it's not going to be the right method for all engravings. And like I said, and if you're and I'm going to show you some images in a second, and you're going to see this. But let's look at these 90-degree scan angles. So these are identical. The difference was in the focus. This one was focused. And let me turn off Andy. Before I do that. Yeah, and guys pointing out different ways you can do this. Nickel is 0.195 millimeters. So yeah, there's different things. As long as you're using the same thing. I don't carry cash. I don't got no money. I don't have anything to jangle around in the pocket, so I don't have any money to lay on my bed. I got round pieces of material I can pick up. I got a bunch of plug nickels, but I ain't got no nickels. Let's see here. All right. In fact, I'm going to mark this spot so I don't miss it. I don't have to go scanning too far back. All right. 90-degree scan angle, focused. And I'm going to get up here really tight so you can start to see. I want to get over here. Can you? And I'm going to change the focus of this a little bit. Can you see the variations in the size of those squares? See, at 0.561 is a lot narrower than the 0.60. And you can see the lines up there, the greater the line interval. And trying to find the sweet spot to really get. I don't have an autofocus camera. I was advised not to get one, and now I'm kind of halfway regretting it. But there you can start to see the difference. And so now this one is focused. So I did the exact same test and raised it only 2 millimeters. And now you're starting to see a whole lot more overburn. And the overburn also is starting to fill in and, darken up the other areas. But I'm like, okay, I can get, because the engraving on the 90 has a wider beam, I'm going to switch cameras again. I was like, okay, I'm happy with the results scanning on a 90. And you know what? I just get the images out. After all that testing, there's Shoeless One. There's Shoeless Joe. I remember the Shoeless One introduced himself last week. He's actually distant family. He's Shoeless Joe. He's his grandfather, I think. He was a world-renowned pool hustler. Is that right? Welcome to the Hobo Nation. Oh, turn that off. There we go. All right. Now, so I've got 4 different images here. It is the exact same image, ABCD back to school. And all of them were done using different parameters, different focuses, different scan angles, and the time variations are drastic. And let's see here, 30, 30, 30. All right. So this is using my preferred premium engrave settings. If I'm looking for the best that I can do for the darkest result, not excluding the line after fill, and we're going to talk about the line after fill in a minute. This is using the 10-watt laser at 800 millimeters a minute, 10% power, and a 0.1 line interval. So this is not the lowest. 0.08 would actually be really, really, but this was a 0.1. And this engraving was 33 minutes and 12 seconds. 33 minutes and 12 seconds to create that. Now, if you're doing coasters or you're doing something small, even if it's an image and you're not worried about the detail, then, and if it's something you need to sell something fairly inexpensive, you can't afford to spend 2 hours engraving 4 coasters. You just can't. You can't make any money doing that. 2 hours, $25 an hour for just your time. That's $50 an hours, and you're selling these things for $25 or $30 for a set of 4, not counting your holder. If you're losing money. Can't do that. So that's not practical. But using the test cards, I went from 33 minutes and 12 seconds to not drying. So I went from 33 minutes and 12 seconds to 9 minutes and 48 seconds. And side by side comparison for what this is, and this is an image and text. I wouldn't cross the street for the difference in the two. But if I can do four of these practically in the time it took me to do one of these, now I can make some money. Okay. And again, this was, too much power for this particular, you get a little over, but that'll wipe up, clean up. But this doesn't need a whole lot of anything done to it. I would still do a light brush with the sandpaper, just get it smooth, then spray it, sand it, spray it, if I'm going to put a finish on it. But we went from 33 minutes to 9 minutes. And what did I change? I changed my LPI from a 0.10 LPI to a 0.40 LPI. But because I've increased that LPI, which, and it makes sense. This one has got a line interval of 0.1. This one is a 0.4. So this one has got 4 times the amount of lines per inch or lines. Than this. So naturally, this one's going to be a fourth of the time because it's a fourth of the number of lines, a fourth of the number of passes that the laser is making. Because of the burn curve, I think that's what you called it, Chris, you're able to increase the power of the laser. So now it's burning stronger and hotter, and it's going to have more kerf, more burning of the material to compensate for that increased line interval, and it's completely and totally hidden. And I'm going to show you these close up. Here is that's the 40. Let's do the 10. And I'm trying to get it at an angle. So there we go. All right. You can see the squares, the checkers, nice, even feel. There's no lines. That's the 0.10 interval. And it's just a good solid feel. Well, there's your 0.40. And I'm going to try it. But I will show you what is wrong with it. Not wrong, but it's a good solid feel. But I did this one on a 0 scan angle. 90% sure that's a 0 scan angle. Trying to get it. I didn't write that, or I didn't mark it on there, and that's my mistake. If that was there it is. That's a 90 scan angle. See the lines running up and down in the rectangles and in the letter I? That's a 90-degree scan angle. So I've gone from a 0-degree scan angle to the 90-degree scan angle, increased my line interval by 4 times, and I've cut the engraving down. Now, if I get up real close, you can see the jaggedness around the letter C and the B. And on the lightning bolt, you can see where the lines start and stop. But I'm having to get that right up to the camera for you guys to see that. Standing here looking at it, you can't see that. I can't see that with the naked eye, with my eyeballs being what they are. But I said, okay, well, how can I eliminate that? Well, you can eliminate that jaggedness around that. And this is where you would want to, if you're going to use this technique and you're wanting to intentionally create some voids between your passes, you're going to need to use a line after fill to go around the perimeter of that engraving to give it the definition that it needs to close everything up. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bunch of jagged lines and do not have that definition. A line after fill always adds definition, even if it's your point 0.1 or 0.08 engraving. A line after fill just makes it pop. So I took that and I did just that. I added a line after fill. So let's go back to this one and show you. So go back and look at the A and the B and the A, B, C, D. See those jagged lines around the top of it up there and around the lightning bolt? That's not good. This is the exact same settings, except I added the line after fill. And the line after fill gets rid of those jagged edges. You no longer see that. You've got a good, clean, defined edge on everything. It looks much, much cleaner. But by adding the line after fill, I've spent more time with the laser out there, and it jumped from the 9 minutes and 48 seconds to 13 minutes and 16 seconds, which is still a far cry from 33 minutes. What we see and what the customer sees are two different things. Use it to your advantage. And a 45-degree scan angle, Terry, is a perfect scan angle when you're cutting boxes with slots and tabs, and you are cutting everything on a 45-degree scan angle, because that makes your kerf completely uniform. You have a perfect kerf when you scan on a 45-degree angle. And that's one of my proudest moments is when Leo from Rolly Automation went, "Man, that's genius." He said, that's so smart. It's like he never thought of that. And he's like, "Man, that's that." But in order for them to configure the diodes within the module to do that, it would make the module quite a bit larger. Now you making it larger, more mass, bigger machine, or less work area. There's always a trade-off. But the only reason that works, Terry, and I'll show you in my little example of my spot size. Go over here to LightBurn. So if you remember this was the two diodes that are combined to make the spot size of the Rolly Automation 10-watt laser. And if I put that in wireframe, or come on, get over here. There we go. Oh, what have I got here? I don't want that. Let's get rid of that. Put that on a toolpath. There we go. That area in the middle is where the two lasers combine. That's your optimal spot. That's where your most power is at. But when we look at these two, and if I went to the Rolly Automation page, we'd see that they say their spot sizes around these measurements, around a 0.14 and a 0.60, or 0.06 rather, a 0.14 and a 0.06. Pay attention to these measurements right here. 0.14 and a 0.06. Y'all keep your eyes on that. Don't pay any attention to what I'm doing over here. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Keep your eyes on these right here. That is a perfect kerf. 0.109 and a 0.109. The kerf is now exactly the same on the X and the Y. And all I did was rotate that 45 degrees. So whenever that, and you can't do that with your module, so you have to do it with your scan angle. And by having it scanning in a 45-degree angle, it's going to have that perfect spot size. And where that comes in to be your biggest, the only time that's really ever an issue is making slots and tabs. Because if you're adjusting your kerf for your laser and you don't have a perfect kerf, then you can't have one kerf setting to accommodate your X and Y. So by rotating that and doing it on a 45-degree scan angle, now you can do your kerf test, find that perfect kerf offset that you need, add that to your cut layer, and allow for that kerf of that spot size. And you're going to make box joints go together without any glue and make them, you're not going to be able to pull them apart, not without breaking the material. So that's the only reason the 45-degree scan angle will come into play, and why you've heard me talk about it in the past. It is for cutting the perfect kerf. Has nothing to do with engraving. In fact, it would be counterintuitive to this because we've made the kerf smaller by rotating it. It's larger when we leave it that way. God bless you, Melissa. Thank you. Melissa, hey, you're a new girl. And I got your message, and thank you for the very kind words. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for your support. God bless you. So we're almost 90 minutes into this. Is there any questions? Oh, yeah, there was a question. What was the question that you had that I said, hey, why does the, okay, let's get that test pulled up here. Let me scan out of this. Let me get rid of this. And I know you can't see it because I don't want you to see it yet. Would the same interval test work or apply to CO2? The same test will work. Your results are going to be completely different. But the same test and the same concept, yes, it's going to work. But and that's the reason you need to do tests, because if I told you, hey, and I share all these settings are going to work with just about any 10-watt laser, 10-watt diode laser using this exact same material. If I use these settings, not just same material from the same vendor in the same environmental conditions. This material is the same material. It's 3mm Baltic birch. But if I try to do this with this, I'm going to have a completely different result, because this stuff is garbage. It's garbage. I don't know what it is. I needed something larger, and I'll show you what I did with that. But so you have to do your own test. But yes, it will benefit you for the same thing. You just answered the question I had about the scan angle. Good. All right. There was a question about why it was showing 100% power in my layers. And let me show you something. LightBurn. Yep. All right. So this, and who was it? Was it Andy? Was that your question? Did you have the question, Andy? I'm scrolling up just to find it, I hope. Nah. If that, okay, Andy, it was you. Write that question again, because, okay. Can you please explain the power settings on your test of 8% to 16%, but in the cuts and layers window, the power and speeds are showing 100% power? Okay. So do y'all follow his question? He's looking at this test right here, and I'm showing a variable power of 8, 10, up to 16. But in the cuts and layers over here, it's showing 100% power. And this is where I thought I was doing something. And this is what LightBurn does. LightBurn, and whenever you do the test in the material test, LightBurn does this. And I did it, but I did it manually. I went in and created all these. You have the ability in your shape or your property shapes menu to set individual powers for individual pieces, individual groups of pieces. And where this comes in handy is, and I'm going to experiment with this. Do I have one here? I think it's out. I've got one I've got to take to the funeral home. You guys, I've talked to you about the flag pieces I do for the funeral homes with the memorials for the fallen vets. Well, those things are only about 1 3/4 inches tall, and I put the medallion for each branch of the service in there, and I want to see the feathers. I want to see the stars, and they're a fraction of a millimeter. And if you use too much power, the overburn can create an issue, and you try to sand clean it up. So I started putting them on a different layer altogether, so I could change that power from the words and still get the feathers and the stars. But this is a really, really cool thing. You can change the power of individual pieces. And that's what I did here. So if I get this right here and I look, you know what? Let's just do this. I went too far. There we go. Grab all of this blue layer. And if I look at the output, there you go. You see, I got those 4 engravings going to be done. Turn off my show reversals. But I'm showing it shade according to power, and you can see the difference. You can barely see one, you can't see the other. There we go. Turn off the shade against shading to power. You can see there's all of them, but LightBurn recognizes there's a difference in the power output, so it shades them differently. Well, how did I do that? Because if I go up here and look at my blue layer, it's showing everything at 16%. It's not everything at 16%. This one's at 8, this one's at 10, this is at 12, this is at 14, this is at 16. How do you do that? You do that by doing this. And I'm going to create one real fast so you can just understand it instead of me just showing you. If I come over here or explaining it, I'm going to demonstrate it. If I create a 10 millimeter square, and then I come over here to my grid array and I tell it I want 5 of those. And I want 5 rows of those. Is that, did I go 5? Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so now I've got, right there. I got 25 of them. And let's go ahead and put all, temporarily, we'll put them all on the black layer. So now I've got 25 squares, and they're all on the black layer, and they're all going to be output at 800 millimeters a minute and 10% power. I don't want that. I want to have a different line interval for each row, and I want to have a different power for each column. So to do that, I've got to put this row on a column that, or on a layer that's not being used. I'll put it on that one. And then I'm going to come over here to this one, and I'll put it on this one. So I'm putting each row on a different layer. And that's fine. I can leave that be. Now with that like that, I can go in here and select that green layer and change the line interval to whatever I want to be, a 0.64. So, okay, that's done. So that's going to change the line interval for that entire row. And then if I go to the next one, 27, I can change that one to a different line interval, 0.5, and go to the next one and continue to change those to whatever I want them to be, a 0.3. And then the pink one, we'll give it I don't know, a 0.2. I'm just making up numbers here. Then I'm going to leave the black one the way it is. So, okay. Well, now all of those have got the exact same line interval on every one of them, but they've also everyone and have got the same power settings. If that's was what over here. If I want to have this column have a different power setting, I go into my shape properties and I use power scale right here. and I tell it what I want it to be. I want that power scale to be 20, not 100. And then I grab this one and I tell them that I want that one to be 40. Then I grab this column and I want that column to be 60, 80. And then that last one would be at 100. Yep. And then when I look at the preview, you see that shade according to power. So now you can see the difference in the power output and the difference in the line intervals. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And then Chris had to go and pee on my parade. He said, "Hey, dum dum, you don't have to do all that. LightBurn does it for you." But hey, I knew about the shape properties and doing the power, scaling the power, but I'd never used it before. And so it was fun just to do that and then recognize that, hey, this is the perfect opportunity to, when I'm doing my flag pieces, I can actually go into my artwork and select those pieces that need to have less power, so I don't have that much overburn going on, requiring less cleanup, and I can leave it all on the same layer and just run it and be done with it. And if I saved it that way, I just bring it in and it's already there every time. All right, so excellent question, Andy. Excellent question. And Desert says, I have a question about LightBurn, if I may. No, you can't. Go away. Go. No, of course. That's why we're here. I'm sorry. I updated, and now all my settings for my MK2 have changed. Yeah. Like, for instance, it is frame in a different direction. Okay. And I tried to go to preferences and tried to bring it back to 2.0. Okay. All right. I have noticed that the framing direction has changed, which is not a big issue. If it's just a matter of, if it's just a matter of, now it's moving counterclockwise versus clockwise, yeah, it's not a big thing. But I have seen some instances where people were talking about it not wanting to home correctly. Your preferences got messed up or got changed during the update. It ain't supposed to happen, but it's happening. People's home preference would get, or the origins would get changed up. And so their engravings would be inverted. And they're like, wait a minute, what happened? I didn't invert the image and it's doing everything. Well, if your home position or your origin is in the wrong orientation for your machine, then it will create an inverse output whenever you do your engravings. There are a lot of problems, and there is an instruction in the LightBurn forum. They have one, I've seen it in one of the threads, where you can click on it and it will show you or take you through the step-by-step instructions on how to revert back to 1.7. It's in the forum. I promise you, I've seen it. And I'm not going to do the 2.0.02 update. I'm not going to do that. I do have the 2.01 update, and I am continuing to push through it to try and find the issues. And so far, I've not found something that I can't work around on the shop computer. But the laptop that I use to design with in the RV, that thing is an aggravating thing to use now because the resolution on the laptop cannot handle everything they put into it. And that's not LightBurn's fault. That's the limitations of the computer. So, yeah, look in the LightBurn forum for reverting back. It's there. If you go up there and search in the LightBurn forum there, revert back to 1.7, you'll find the instructions on going back to that. And I know a lot of people that are doing it. Ba, 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 ba. Looking for any more questions or comments before we call it. I'm just better to be taught how to fish than given one. Absolutely, Terry. Absolutely. Absolutely. Not sure what you agree with, but hey, I'm glad you do. Okay, yeah, and so okay, and I didn't see, and since Melissa is new, I see Terry's answering Melissa. Um, and Melissa is new to the stream, and was last week your first week, and I know you joined as a patron too. Bless you. Um, Whenever we do this for selfish reasons, for me, it's my selfish reasons. When I first started doing this streaming, and I did a stream like tonight where I'm just talking, and people were just listening and soaking it in, and there wasn't a whole lot of chatting going on. People weren't really familiar with one another yet, so you didn't see all the dialogue back and forth with folks like you see going on now. It was just like a bunch of crickets in the stream. Nothing was being posted. Nothing was happening. And I was like, are y'all still there? Are you with me? It's like, so I said, I come up with the idea. I said, yeah, I tell you what. And they said, yeah, we're learning. I said, okay, good. I said, every time you learn something new, put a number in there. So if you learn a second thing, put a number 2 in there. If you learn a third thing, drop a 3 in there. It does 2 things. One, it lets me know that you are there and you're engaged and you're learning. I'm not spinning my wheels, and I'm not making a complete bumbling idiot of myself. Well, I might be doing that too. But it also, and the selfish part of it is it keeps that stream active and that lets YouTube know that you're engaged in the stream, and the analytics of the way all that stuff works in the back end. That's a good thing. It's a positive. It tells YouTube that people are engaged. And the more engagement there is, then it helps boost all those things that make it a promotable video for LightBurn to push out, not LightBurn, for YouTube to push out. Anytime you have a question or a comment, if you want it to jump out at me, like what Jack just did here, put 3 question marks in front of your question, or 3 exclamation points like Desert here, if it's a comment that you want to jump out of the chat and for me to see and to address. That way I don't have to look at all of the comments where y'all are talking about stuff and Chris is helping people with their problems, or Jackson, the shop's in here and he's talking to people about different things. You can have your own conversations, and I don't have to read every one of them. The exclamation points and the question marks jump out at me, and I know to go look at those and address them. So now I'm going to scroll back up here and find the first one, like right there, Terry. I got that one. And then the next one, please explain the numbers in the comments. There we go. Yep, I got it. So what was the big project? Oh, thank you, Jack. And with this week in Patreon, this week's Patreon, I had a patron, Dale, who has reached out to me, and he needs to make a frame for some artwork. And God is good. I've been working for the last 2 weeks trying to figure out a way to make a frame to display some artwork the easiest way and in the most presentable fashion, and it not look like something that came off of a hobby laser. I finished that last night, and that's what Dale has now reached out saying he needs to have done. And I just figured out how to do it and really make it look nice. And that's why I say God is good. What you need on time. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to scroll through these questions and comments, and then we'll show you that. Problems with setting is due to a computer speed. Install moving on faster than Windows copies preferences file and end up with default settings instead of your settings. Yeah. Okay. I think I understand what he says. Problems with the settings is due to the computer's speed. So your computer's limitations are what's causing some of the problems with LightBurn. And this goes back to the initial problems. It's not, not all, but the majority of the developers and testers, they're working with some of the best tech that's available right now. The rest of us are getting by with what we can get by with. And they released 2.0 before any of us schleps had a chance to look at it. Our stuff just ain't doing it. It can't handle it. It won't work. There's too much. They got 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag, and we can't do it with our little Easter basket we got that we call a computer. It can't handle it. And so there's where the conflicts come into play. It's not a limitation of the software. It's a limitation of the computers trying to use the software, which is what I've said all along about people who can have problems with, and people who are using and have used LightBurn for years on their laptops. They may not even be aware of how many limitations they are stuck with because they're using it on a laptop. If and when you can afford to go to a more powerful, and it doesn't have to be big and fancy. It doesn't have to be high dollar. It doesn't have to be a $4,000 piece of equipment, but a gaming graphics computer. You can even do it with a laptop if it's got a high resolution screen and it's a really good graphics card. And I don't know anything about that stuff. I'm talking to you from elementary education on the tech. I don't understand that stuff. But a really good graphics card, a really good gaming processor, and high resolution on your screen, you'll probably be surprised at how many things open up to you in LightBurn that you have to go and find because they're hidden in drop-down menus that you can't see unless you go move this or look for that or click on this to open that. And it's all because of your screen resolution, and it's because of the limitations of your laptop. Steve, I just called you on the phone and bugged you that way. What you talking about, Willis? I ain't got no missed call. Huh? You lost me on that one. I don't know. Don't know what. Huh? And Glenn says he's mass producing the Navy. That's great. Great. I did not do it. Okay. All right. How can you change the location of the interval test on my machine? It goes to the front of my laser. How can you change the location of the interval test? All right. If you're talking about the test in LightBurn, the material test, you can do the interval test. If that's the one you're talking about, we need to clarify that first. Chuck, are you talking about how do you change the position of where the material test goes on your laser? The LightBurn laser tool material test. Is that what you're talking about? And Andy, thank you for all you do and all you have done. And God bless you, sir. Hey, there's Wild Man. Hey, Steve. I now beta test on main computer and a laptop and an older computer to find machine. Yeah, because the right equipment make a difference. So who was it that had a question about? Yeah, Chuck. Chuck, if you're still with us in the stream, your question about how can I change the location of the interval test on my machine, it goes to the front of my laser. If you're talking about the LightBurn test, let me go back over to LightBurn. When you open up the laser tools and you go to the material test, it tells you right here what you're going to be creating. If you want a 10 by 10 test and you put in here title and all the stuff, all the different descriptions, however you want it, you can change the size of your squares. You can make them rectangles. You can do it. And it tells you right here what your output size is going to be. Once you're done configuring what you want to be tested, it'll tell you the size of your output. Right here is telling you where the center of your test is going to be located. And right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, it was my understanding the default for that was supposed to send it to the center of your work area. You're saying yours is going to the front, and that could be a difference in preferences or something like that. But if you want to control where that test grid is output, then you need to change it in that X and Y center location. You know how big your piece is going to be. Here it's telling me it's going to be, and I'm using round numbers, this is 83.1 by 93. If I just round that to 95 square, if I've got a 95 square output, and there's and I've got to put in the dimensions for the center, then if I want to put it in the bottom home position for my laser, half of that, if I said 90, half of that's 45. So 45 up and 45 over would be the center. And if I want to put a 10 millimeter buffer around it, then I would do my X and Y at 55 and 55. Here, I'd come in here and tell it to go to 55 and 55. And then that's going to change the output location from the center of the machine down to my home position. So I can use the known information of my output size, how big is the piece going to be, to know what the approximate center of it is, and then use that math to place it anywhere I want to put it on the laser bed. Yeah, and Chris says, yeah, the default is the center. So Chuck, I don't know, and I never seen you didn't see a clarification if you were talking about that test or my test. My test that I sent out through the patrons, you can drag it on the bed and put it anywhere you want to. All right, now let's look at that. What I got the XW so I can do bigger pieces. But I really like my 300 by 300 material and that's when I design with the mindset of using 300 by 300 material, because that's what 90% of the viewers are able to work with. But fortunately, Dale has an XW. I've got the XW, and he's needing to make a big piece. And I just finished this one. Now this, I did not do the diamond art. I'd never seen diamond art, never messed with it until I was asked to make a frame. And this one is 200 by 300 millimeters. So my my filer is 300 millimeters square, and I need to do 200 by 300. So, okay, well, you could get that out of a piece of that. That's the size of the artwork. I need to make a frame. So I can't get that out of my filer material. That's why I had to get this stuff that's made for Glowforge. And it fits in the XW perfectly. Didn't cut worth a flip. But I needed to make something that I could display this diamond art in, keep it protected from the dust and the dirt. Because if you've not seen this diamond art, it is a cross between a paint by numbers and a light bright. Do you remember either or both of those? But these little gems are about 1 millimeter in size. And you've got a piece of material that's got an image on it that's color coded or number coded for certain colors of the gems. And it's filled with glue. And all you do is pick up a gem, put it in a spot. Pick up a gem, put it in a spot. It's probably a great stress reliever, because if you don't do anything but have to just you tune everybody else out and just feel. So I imagine it'd be a great stress reliever. But this is her artwork, and she did one, and she took it to Hobby Lobby to have it framed, and it's a custom piece. You can't go buy a frame off the shelf for something like this. So a custom frame, matted and all, it was, over $200. And I did this matted. It's behind an anti-glare. Go see there. Oh, there you can see the light. There it is. But it's anti-glare plastic with a mat on it. And then the Baltic birch frame, and that looks nice. There we go. But then how did I get all that in there and it's all protected? I've got a box that's behind the frame. It's completely enclosed, and I had a little bit of a goof, but instead of redoing it, I just put this inside of this. My finished piece, all of this is solid. It doesn't have this other piece here. But I've got a lip on the back of this where it sits on the wall. It's a 10 millimeter lip all the way around it that allows for me to put this alligator hanger on here that I made using just a simple box. And then now that is flush with the wall as well. So now that can hang on the back on the wall, stand off the wall, and all of my slots and tabs are completely hidden by a really nice frame. And that's going to cost her a whole lot less than a couple $100 at Hobby Lobby. And I'm going to be and if you're a patron, not this week because today's Saturday, next week in three or 4 days, probably either Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be going live on Patreon like I did. I think it was Melissa. That might be when you've seen me I screwed up and accidentally shared a Patreon stream to everybody. Well, this one won't be shared with everybody. This will be just patrons. I'm going to be designing this entire piece from scratch to accommodate whatever size artwork that Dale has that he needs to showcase. So that's what's coming for patrons, is doing this. It's really slick, looks really nice, and inexpensive to do. So let's see here. Questions and comments. Yep. So I got there's the project. I like it. I like it a lot. They haven't seen it in person. They've seen pictures and images of it, and they really liked it. They're very, very happy with it. Moving the test is a little awkward, but changing that will cause problems in other areas. You're talking about permanently moving it? Because I move it all the time for my test. When I'm especially if I'm got just a piece of uh, wrap or something. I will move it down there to the home position, 10 millimeters off X and Y. You're not saying that that can cause problems, are you? Moving test is a little awkward, but changing that will cause problems in other areas. I've not ran into any problems changing it for my one-time use every time I use it. As always, large pound hashtag. Don't follow you there, Wayne. Do 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 do. Sounds like a stress maker. I'm guessing you're talking about the diamond art. Yeah, I guess. I as a much younger elementary school, I enjoyed the heck out of doing string art, and it's just the monotony of just doing. It's a great way to you can let your creative juices out and not have to think about anything because it's just repetition and pattern and same thing. Different things for different strokes for different folks. Questions and comments. Questions. Several of you made comments. Looks nice. Great. Can you do an 8x10 as well? Absolutely. You can do this. And Jack, I don't know what size artwork that Dale's needing to do, but when we do this design, once you see how I do this, it's so simple. That it'll be easy to replicate it and for any size artwork. But the question, where this really comes in, and I don't know what I did with it. I made a really, really nice frame for doing 4x6 pieces. In fact, you know what? Ding 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 ding. No, I don't want that. I want to do this. Bring it over here. Do this. And is it in the group? Let's go look. To show them proof of concept when I was doing this design, because they've got a bunch of these that they want to do frames with. Wow, it's going back to the first month. Oh, there it is. All right. Switch. So this is a 4x6 frame that's the same concept, except I've got it on a stand instead of a wall hanger. And there you go. And so it's kind of the same concept where I've got a nice box that can be completely enclosed and protect all the artwork, and you put that frame out front. Now, because this one was not done as a wall hanger, I don't have that recessed with the area, because the whole reason for having this 10 millimeter gap there is to be able to have room to put the hanger in here. And it just looks nice, and that that way you've got a place to hang that. And then the entire back of it can sit flush against the wall and not have that out there on the wall and have it, this pushing it off the wall. But I did a 4x6 to show proof of concept how it can be done. So you could do 4x6, 8x10s, and all that. And that piece there with the 4x6, I did that entire design out of, I think, 2 pieces. Was it 2 pieces of 300x300 material? I think. So I had $4 tied up in the entire frame. Yeah, material cost wise, you can't go buy a frame for that, and it wouldn't look as nice as something like that. So But this is a different story. There's quite a bit tied up in this cost wise, but nowhere near as expensive as going to Hobby Lobby and saying, I need a custom frame matted for a 200 by 300 piece of artwork. Like I said, this was, $220 or $230 at Hobby Lobby. And, I'm doing this for her for under $100. All right. Questions and comments. The way to position the material. The way to position material having to use center point rather. I'm not quite following you there. I'm trying to figure what you're talking about. I don't follow you. The way to position material. Don't follow you. Sorry. All right. All right. And yes, and since Terry's brought it up, time for a shameless self-promotion. I really am horrible at this. We do still have 76 people watching. And Terry, hit your refresh button just in case. There actually may be more likes than what you're seeing because you haven't refreshed it. Refresh your browser and see what the likes are. If you have enjoyed watching this, you got a little something from the stream, hit that like button. If you're in another group, any group that you do not see me actively participating in at this time, promote me. If you feel like, people should be seeing what's going on, or that this is a good one to watch, a good resource, share it. I've got some trolls out there that are doing their best to cancel me, and they've got more power than they should have. And they've even had the ability to prevent me from accessing certain places in certain parts of the World Wide Web and different groups. And so my presence is absent. So if you see something and people come up, well, hey, how can you do this? Or how you got that? You know what? I know the perfect guy to ask. You should go look at hobowithwood.com or Hobo with Wood on YouTube. Or he's probably got a video for it, or contact hobowithwood at Gmail. He's help get the name out there. And I've started putting the quote on my, some of you may have seen it. Some of you may not have seen it. But downloads. And right here, this is the thumbnail that I used for this live stream. You don't have to stand on others to stand tall. Hobo with Wood. I ain't stepping on nobody. I ain't trying to hold nobody down. I ain't trying to. But I got so many. It's ridiculous, the trolling and the nonsense and the elementary BS that's going on. So help me out. Promote me. Promote the channel. Promote my presence. Make it. Share it wide, because there are people out there doing their best to hold me down, standing on my neck and not letting me get out there. And they got more power than they should. Oh, yes. I loved it too, Terry. Let's see here. And Desert's giving a shout out to thanks Steve and Jeep and Chris for the information on LightBurn. Well, that's why we're here. I thought it was pretty good, Jeff. That's why I put it on everything. And I got my initials out there. Hobo with Wood. You don't have to stand on others to stand tall. You know what? It's a big world. And I am fortunate and I am blessed to have people right here in this stream from all over the world and all walks of life. And if you just keep in mind and recognize that we communicate differently, different personalities, I didn't get upset when this person contacted me this week and they thought I was upset. And they said, well, it seems like you got short and got upset. And I said, no, I didn't. And I didn't get upset that you thought I was upset. I don't have, my ego is big enough to accommodate everyone in this stream. There's room for all of us here. I'm no better than any one person here. And I invite the opportunity to be corrected because that's when I'm learning something. And, who doesn't want to learn, right? And if there's a better way to do it, or if I'm doing it completely wrong, then I need to know. So I welcome the opportunity for someone to reach out and say, hey, if you do this or don't do that, this is a better way or another way. Because Yahoo, you always have other options. And thank you, Tom. Thank you. God bless you, sir. Let's see here. I had a Facebook closed down because they kept deleting posts mentioning you. Wow. I had a Facebook closed down because they kept deleting posts mentioning you. Yeah. Facebook group. Yeah. I said and it's one person. It's one person. And he might have a couple of little minions, but there's one person that's behind it all. LBX is this weekend, and we are also here learning. Yeah, if y'all are going to New York City, God protect you and keep you safe. I don't want to be in that mess. No, thank you. Been there several times. Don't ever want to drive in there. Don't ever want to try and find a parking place. And the few times I've been, I didn't go on my dime. They were free trips, business trips, whatever, because I can't afford to do something like that. I ain't done it. And you know what? And hey, Henry, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. Mr. Hansen is a patron and a new supporter here in YouTubers, new member in YouTube. He's in Denmark. And that's why I said I'm blessed to have people all over the world that's coming here for an opportunity to exchange and to learn. But he's in Denmark. And to help with the communication, his English is not his first language. I don't even know if it's his second language. But he even told me, he says, his English was broken. I said, don't use English. Send it to me in Danish. Send it to me in your native tongue. And then I just use Google Translator to translate what he sent me. And then I do the same for him. I'll do what I need to say it, and then translate it to Danish and send it back to him in Danish. So that hopefully minimizes any breakdown in communication between the two of us. Because, different words can have different meanings, or, the slang, so hopefully, the translator helps eliminate some of that. And he's saying there, don't worry, you're the best. I don't care about being the best. I'm not worried about titles. I'm not worried about popularity. In all honesty, I'm here to get paid. I am your dancing monkey. And if, and some people say, oh, that's a derogatory thing. No, it ain't. The organ grinders, the organ grinders had their organs, they'd grind, and they had little monkey to dance and go around and hold their cup up and they collect the money. They're dancing monkey collecting money. Well, I'm your dancing monkey and you're the organ grinder. I'm going to dance to your tune, do what I have to do to help you learn what you want and entertain you a little bit. So I ain't looking to be the best. I ain't looking to be the most popular. There's room for all of us. And we all have different personalities and different things that we're trying to do. I love watching Stephen Clack. but their live stream's a different kind of stream than what I do. And it's good. That means there's some variety out there, because you don't want to watch the same thing, and seeing the different personalities is a good thing. I don't care if I've got the most subscribers. I don't care if I'm the most popular. And I'm never going to come across as being the smartest man in the room, because you know what? I ain't the smartest man in the room. And I'm not going to pretend to be, so anyway, yeah, I'm here to get paid. That's the only reason I'm here, and your gifts and your super thanks are greatly appreciated. But it's your participation in these streams, and that I'm getting paid from YouTube from this, and your tips and your super thanks are greatly needed and appreciated. But ultimately, and I tell my patrons, as soon as you sign up, I am your employee. I work for my patrons. I report to them. My patrons know more about what's going on in my world than anybody else does, because I'm their employee. I work for them. And if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm supposed to be doing it, I feel like I need to call in. If I'm sick, I need to report in, tell them what's going on. This is why I'm not doing it. And why I'm, so my patrons, they're the bosses. They're the ones that allow this to continue. So thank you to each and every one of you that are here, and the patrons that continue to do above and beyond more than what the patron support. Seriously, God bless you. All right, so let's wrap this up. And if there's no other questions, we're going to call it a night. We're over 2 hours. I am the smartest man in the room for 2 things out of 637 things. All right, guys. God bless each and every one of you. Anybody up there in New York for this, seriously, be safe. Keep your head on a swivel. It's a crazy world we live in. And and yes, he's still in the room. Still in the room. Hey, buddy. Yeah, there's room for everybody. And I hope that Clack didn't take any offense to whenever I mentioned you. He's kind of like the ShamWell guy. But wait, there's more. Because I watch them. There is a place for it. I love seeing his reviews on all the different types of equipment that's out there. But it's I find it just a little bit amusing. But that's not me. That's not going to be me. That's never going to be me. But there's a need for it, and I'm glad he's filling it. So and I don't know how the two of you guys got together. You're not oil and water. But it's a very good collaboration. You guys do an excellent job, and I enjoy watching you. Let's see here. But you are more down to earth, and we're more likely to learn from you. Well, I am what I am, and I can't pretend to be anything else other than what I am. And I did have a very, very, very smart manager tell me one time, do not be a fountain of knowledge. The best thing you can do when you don't know is say, I don't know. Don't pretend to know everything. When you don't have an answer for it, don't make something up, because you might be talking to a rocket scientist that knows the formula, the proper mixture for the rocket fuel that you're trying to explain. That just shut up and say, I don't know. I don't know that answer, but I'll find out for you. We'll figure it out together. Don't be a fountain of knowledge. I'm not the smartest man in the room, even when I'm the only one in the room. Well, if you're still here, good night, Melissa, and thank you again for your support. Thanks for yet another great stream. Take care and see y'all in the next one. Yes. All right. Excellent. All right, guys. I don't want to miss any comments before I wrap it. All right. Again, thank you all, and have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And the patrons, I look forward to next week designing that frame with Dale. So with that said, night, everybody, and we will see you in the next video.